Well, in the meantime here, we can maybe start going through some of these PRs quick to get them out of the way. Uh, so two in the last 2 weeks, two new ones. One is mine, which is really simple, just saying the Blue Store min alloc size to 4K for both hard drives and NVMe drives. We'll see if that ends up being a good idea or not as more testing happens. For NVMe, I think it probably actually at this point is about a wash as far as performance goes versus using a 16K min alloc size, and the space amp benefit is pretty huge. So I think we should do it. Igor had some tests on hard drives that at first sounded like it was really good or looked really good, and then I think he thought that he needed to redo some of them. So I'm not sure yet what the latest on that is, but once he's kind of done some of his testing, maybe we'll see if we still think that 4K min-alloc size for hard drives is a good idea or not. But for now, this is at least a placeholder PR to start tracking this stuff. So we've got
I'll,
that there.
yeah, I'll kick in. I've done quite a bit of testing on SSD on both Luminous and Nautilus code bases with it, and same experiences as you have on the NVMe. It's a wash.
Okay, cool. That's good to hear. We've got our test environment in house, but it's just one set of NVMe drives. So the fact that you've also seen that makes me feel better about it. Cool. All right. Let's see. Second new one we've got here is this clear newly allocated space for wall log. Yes, that's the one where it was buggy. If we did not do that, we could end up with corruption. So it sounds like that is now in testing, which is very good. All right, a couple of different things closed. The first two here are kind of related to each other and have to do with the OSD op queue. I have not actually been following that really closely, but I think Sam was fairly involved in some of these discussions, especially since he's looking at some of this quality of service effort that we've kind of been trying to get over the fence for the last couple of years. So that those two both merged. Hopefully that leads to better performance or behavior or something. Sam's thing merged for the FIO Ceph object store backend and LTTNG trace points. That's good. And then this right around cache one, that merged? That merge or did that just get closed? Or was that put in the wrong place? Stalebot closed that. Okay. It's closed by Stalebot. Okay, so potentially maybe that needs to be reopened or something at some point. But anyway, that's that. Lots of updated stuff. What's interesting in here? Eric's been working on this filtering in the CLS for RGW, which is really good in a lot of ways because it will reduce the amount of stuff that we send RGW when there's filtering that can happen. But the thing that I'm a little bit worried about with the existing filtering that's there and potentially some of the filtering that we want to add is that it means that we have to decode things in the CLS code inside the OSD, and that's actually showing a fair amount of wall clock time being spent doing that when we're doing bucket listing. So Casey had mentioned the possibility at one point. You're here, Casey. I think you had mentioned, if I remember right, good morning. The possibility of rearranging the bucket directory entries so that we could potentially just decode the parts that we filter on rather than the whole thing.
Yeah, the filtering in Eric's PR is just based off of the keys, so it doesn't need any decoding there. But the only other decoding or the only other filter I know of is for versioned objects where it just needs a flag. So potentially separating the flag from the rest.
Cool. So let's see. Okay, so yep, that's Eric stuff. So that's uh, hopefully will lead to improved performance when we can filter things and it's useful. Um, let's see what else do we have here. Placing inlining immutable small objects within the O node. We talked about that a little bit at CDM yesterday. Igor has another PR that does something similar, but at the blob level. Um, I don't know if that's actually in this list of PRs or if that got closed at one point, but I think Sage is maybe more in favor of Igor's proposal versus actually inlining stuff right in the O node. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. There were some new updated performance and CPU usage data in that PR as well, kind of showing some of the trade-offs with it. Let's see what else we have. Oh, Adam, your stuff I object. I think got more updates. Just
Yes,
kind
it
of
did.
yeah,
Just a
getting
couple of
closer.
fixes. Just a couple of fixes. So it now passes RBD tests cleanly. Um, and I fixed a couple of bugs shown up by the Ceph testing. And this morning I found one more, which I'm hoping will be the last one, but we shall see. And I'm still covetous of reviews or an approval. You don't even have to look at it. I won't complain so long as somebody clicks approve. Because a bunch of people have looked at it and left approving comments. They just never clicked approve.
Oh yes, I hear you, Adam. I would offer to maybe trade approvals on a couple of my PRs, but I'm not sure if either of us would come out of that well. Uh-oh. Can you still hear me?
Oh, yeah, I hear you.
Okay, cool. My headset just sounded like it reset, so I wasn't sure. Um, all right. Well, good luck, Adam. I feel for you. Let's see. Oh shoot. Go. Okay, I think my mic still works, but I've got to get my headset back in order. So just one sec, guys. Uh, let's see. Would anyone mind saying something quick? See if this works.
Hello, hello. Hear me?
Oh, good deal. It does work. Thank you, Sage.
Sorry, I'm late. Got distracted by
Oh, no
Numa.
worries. Oh yeah. Are you looking at that bug about it not
Yeah,
like yeah
yeah. It
inheriting
turns out you have to
like
set it
the
on
threads
every
are not
thread, not
inheriting?
just one thread. And it was super. First, I tried to make it so we set it really early on in the startup process so that all the children are set. But that was really hard because you basically have to set everything up to find out what device and what network addresses you're going to use and all that stuff, and then tear it all down again and then set it and start it all up again, which is sort of stupid. So instead, I just look in proc and I iterate the threads and I just set it on everyone.
Oh wow.
Seems to work, except that and if I set the affinity and then I get the affinity, it gives me back the right thing. But if I look in proc in the shed file, whatever it is, there's a field in there called NUMA preferred NID, and that doesn't get set until later. I think there's like something in the kernel scheduler that like looks at NUMA faults and then like sets that dynamically. And so after I do some workload, a bunch of threads move over, but not all of them because they're probably idle or something. I'm not sure if it's like the ideal solution, but I don't know, it works okay, I guess. And then I noticed that there's another function called mem set policy or set mem policy, something like that, that basically controls whether it tries to the process memory is allocated on the same NUMA node or memory attached to the same NUMA node or nearby or whatever. And so I think we should be setting that, but that one doesn't let you choose what thread. It's only the current thread. So I think that one we have to set the policy, I think, at startup. And then basically always set it, which is sort of annoying. I think it'll be okay. Because the policy is like try the local node, and if you can't do the local node, then do a remote node. I think that's the one we want. And that should be okay even if we don't set any NUMA affinity. They'll just sort of tend to make memory more local. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, now we've got the new Intel nodes up and running. We can actually try your stuff on those where we've got a real actually like balanced architecture, right?
Right. Yeah. I'll discard the memory policy with the config option, and then you can go from there. We'll see what happens.
Cool. All right, let's see.
Okay.
There's a couple more PRs here we could cover if you want. Do you want? I mean, do you have anything that you want to cover in here?
Nope.
Okay, I think the stuff that's left here. Majian Peng has a mutex contention PR that theoretically should improve something. I don't remember which one he's looking at. But there was no performance improvement from it, and somebody actually has to go through and make sure that's actually correct. I think he was hoping maybe Igor could. I don't think I have time to look at it. I'm probably not even the best person to anyway, so there's that. Igor has an update for his framework for intelligent DB space usage. I think I don't remember what he did.
It's basically
rebase or
trying to improve the RocksDB decisions about where to put new SST files.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know what he changed.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know what his update was. Yeah. I'm not sure what's blocking us on it.
I can't remember. It looked good when I reviewed it. Overall, I might have had small comments. I don't remember what the status is.
Yeah, he did some kind of update recently.
I asked for a test. He added that.
Okay. Okay.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah. Then also his PR for speeding up pooler removal for this collection list prefetch thing that we were talking about yesterday. That got rebased, so that's there. And there were updates to the IOU ring stuff from Roman. And Jens has been commenting on that PR too, so I think Jens is kind of excited and wants to see it happen.
Did we end up having to put a big mutex around it in order to make it lock safe?
He had to do something. It previously was not. Your memory's correct. I don't remember what he did though.
Because I think if we do put a mutex around it, then it will be pointless. It'll defeat the purpose of using the URI in the first place if we have to add our own realization. So
Yeah, and the performance numbers are it's kind of interesting. They're better in like the 16K to 32K range sometimes. Not entirely sure why that's the case. It could be. I seem to remember that earlier on too, though. That I think some of his original numbers showed something similar like that. Let's see. Oh, his original numbers showed performance benefits kind of across the board. So, well, in any event, that's there. Without it being supported in older kernels is kind of hard to test, right? Because neither CentOS 8 or anything really support it yet.
yeah, and we won't really be able to test it very well.
Exactly.
Looks like it's like marginally better sometimes.
Might become more better as we continue to improve other stuff. I mean, even now, sometimes I can see that we're blocking on IO submit, which is kind of where I would suspect that this should start doing a better job for us.
Yeah. Actually, for the RBD one, it shows some pretty big. I don't trust these numbers because they jump around for the different IO sizes. Sometimes it's 10% better, sometimes it's like 50% better, sometimes it's 10% worse.
At the very least, it'd be nice to get some repeated tests on these and see if we see general improvements or if it's just really random.
Yeah.
Well, sooner or later we'll have to move over to it, right? Because this is what Jens wants to use as like the successor to AIO. But yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's about it for stuff that's been updated. Anything else that we missed?
As I put in the chat, I'm hoping to talk about what's the status of sharding and the rumors that it needs maybe some more concentrated help because it's a bit unstable at the moment, but it's on our critical path.
And so Adam continues to work on it. He's doing more performance benchmarking with larger database sizes now. He's adjusting FAO to be able to handle that. I think another piece that maybe, Mark, you could help with at some point would be trying to test more with HSBench, and so we can get more tests on the listing side, because there might be some impact from having to list across multiple shards.
Yep. I think I will attempt to thread the needle and do that on the new Intel nodes that they donated for us so that we can simultaneously get that testing done and show that we're actually using these and not letting them languish. So I think we should be able to do that.
Sounds great.
Also, speaking of which, with some of the previous HSBench tests, we noticed that there was this kind of instability during RGW writes where performance would kind of like oscillate a lot. And when I put RocksDB on a RAM disk, that went away. It was much more stable. So it was really the database workload that was causing that oscillation, it looked like. So I wonder a little bit if with that, simultaneously with that, if we start looking at having the database on Optane, if we might be able to eliminate some of that. And then we'll want to look at how Adam's sharding stuff also impacts that. So Lots of
Yeah,
good
that
stuff
would be
there.
very
to look
interesting.
at.
Well, I wasn't speaking so much about performance as about the statement that it's unstable and crashes. Has that been root caused and fixed?
There's still like 1 or 2 remaining issues, I think. But Adam's still looking into them and trying to figure them out in parallel with the performance testing.
Matt, I think there was a seg fault that he found and fixed, and then there was also this other PR that he's got 35 or 3549 clear newly allocated space for wall logs. He was hitting that as well, and he issued a fix for it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like now could be a good time to do some runs with it and try just exploring the space.
Yeah, I think that's what Mark was mentioning with the test on the new nodes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We can do tests there. And yeah, Matt, I mean, if you guys want to do testing on it, it sounds like he's able to get through at least like 8 hours worth of testing fine. I don't know, maybe even longer at this point. So I mean, it sounds like it's at least in a stable enough of a state right now that you guys could look at it and play with it too if you wanted.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's maybe too early for performance work, and more in a stage where, I mean, we just want to rapidly get to where it runs stably.
Josh, have you heard anything from Adam on if he's still continuing to hit like any kind of like RockCB corruption or other issues like he had
I
previously?
think he was still seeing one issue with, at least when he was with a certain charting configuration that he was still trying to track down.
Okay.
It was oddly showing up only in a certain number of column families, not in others. So just trying to figure out what was going on there still.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Anything else, Matt, or any other things related to that you want to talk about?
No, yeah, no. I'm just, I think this is critical path work, so I'm excited about it and want to get it, I want to get eyes on it early, but want to get it, figure out whether it operationalized as early if it's going to be successful, if we're going to run into roadblocks with it. We'll just know that.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I've got a PR that's waiting on it too, so I've been like, hopefully we get it soon.
Will help. I mean, if we can be helpful, then we will. But I think I was really calling out. I think you're if you have some time and want to, I mean, again, can bring it into testing with or without our help, we'll happily. I think that'll be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, I'll probably try to work it in on the new nodes once we get those into kind of a good configuration state. Right now, they're the bonding setup on them isn't kind of working properly. It's still going through one NIC. So we've got to fix that. And then there's also I suspect we probably want to do some OS level tuning on them. Just some initial runs. They were kind of not as fast as I was hoping they'd be, but I suspect that it's largely due to probably more CPU related things than disk related things. So like looking at C states and P states and hyperthreading and kind of turbo boost and all these different policies. I think it's probably the first order of business on them. Anyway, so yep. Ongoing stuff with all of that. But once we have that worked out, then I think this could be the next thing we start testing. Okay, so let's see. I was going to mention we do have the new Intel nodes up and running. And maybe in part of that, I'll give a shout out to Kifu because we've got CentOS 8 running on them, and he figured out in about a day how to get it Ceph building on them. So also a shout out to Ken Dreyer for packaging up a bunch of stuff that we needed, including TC malloc and other things. So I think with just a little bit more work to install deps.sh, it should be pretty straightforward to get stuff building on CentOS 8, which is really, really good, especially since it just was released not too long ago. So that's the new Intel nodes, ongoing work with those. Okay, Sage, this is an incomplete list, but I tried to start writing down all the different performance-related things that have been kicking around in my head that I want to try to get fixed for Octopus, or at least improved. Not necessarily fixed, but just make them better to the extent that we can. So this is not complete, and feel free, folks, to add in more if you have them, but this is kind of just off the top of my head stuff that I worry about.
Okay.
So the big one that we talk about a lot is RocksDB in BlueStore, right? We've got a couple of things that we've done, minor things. We updated RocksDB, that helped a little bit. We added multi-thread compaction, which was a small thing, but we had to test it to make sure it was good and okay to do. I think we feel it's safe now, which it may not have been in the past. So that's good. And then Atom sharding stuff is really the other really big thing here, right?
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of work that will go into testing that, I think, and making sure it all looks good. But that's kind of what we're looking at right now. It sounds like for TRocksDB, that's probably out for the moment at the very least. And may be out since the RocksDB guys don't really want to entertain the idea of merging it in tree.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we can kind of do in that space to reduce write amp?
Is this the RocksDB space or the BlueStore space?
RocksDB space, I guess, assuming that we're sticking with RocksDB for BlueStore.
I mean,
anyway.
Certainly for Octopus we are, yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like it's Igor's base allocation thing about being smarter about levels, and it's the sharding. Those are the two things that are going to have the biggest difference.
Let me add Igor's thing in here too, because that's also important.
Yep.
That even maybe deserves its own high-level topic.
Okay.
Okay, BlueStore caching improvements. So this was surprisingly ripe for work. The cache refactor had a pretty big impact on performance, bigger than I actually expected when I was working on it. So the refactor itself is done. That's merged. That was pretty much just moving trimming into the CPO CTP threads, making trimming happen on add rather than in the mempool thread, periodically, and then also splitting the buffer and onode cache so that we aren't contending on the same lock on updates. That was the majority of what that covered. Work in progress, the onode double caching fix that will go in after Adam's sharding fix or refactor. And then the cache age binning, which I have been holding off on until we also get the onode double caching fix in. So those two are kind of a change dependency there. And really the cache age binning, once we have the double caching fixed, then the question will be, I think that the primary benefit of the age binning will be if you're like seeing workloads that alternate between something like RBD and RGW, where for a while you have RGW traffic and you really want OMAP cached, but then later on maybe there is no RGW traffic and it's just RBD traffic, and then you want to move back from like a mixed cache scenario to only really caching O nodes. That's where I think we'll probably see the biggest benefit from it. But we'll see once we get all the other stuff in, then that will be we can actually start testing that and seeing what it does for real.
It seems surprising that we would actually need an actual decoded OMAP structure cache. I mean, it seems like if we have good cache, the appropriate cache behavior of the O nodes and underlying segments in the lower layers, that we're getting what we should have. Bucket standard.
It's a CPU space trade-off. So if you let RocksDB cache the data, you have to decode the metadata every time, so you spend a lot more CPU. Whereas if we keep the decoded O node in memory in that cache, then
well, the O node cache maybe, but I mean, I'm talking about OMAP. The OMAP.
Oh, OMAP.
The OMAP.
Oh, I see.
That's
Yeah, I
very
don't think we
simple
want to
times.
do that.
I'm nervous about it. I think it'll just be wasted effort.
I don't think
Yeah, we don't have that.
Definitely not. Yeah. But sorry, you're not proposing that though, Mark, right? You're not proposing that we add an OMAP cache? No. Okay. All right.
Yeah, no, we talked about it before, but
Okay, I'm sorry. I misheard, and I heard OMAP when I guess ONO was used.
It's so I think
Sure.
my understanding. You can tell me if I'm wrong, Mark, but my understanding here is that the cache binning is basically making it so that we can have a little bit more granular control over when we're dedicating memory for for RocksDB to cache the SSD files that contain OMAP data. And so we can prioritize that relative to O nodes, for example.
Yep, the age binning, what it does is it basically lets you look at kind of a very high level picture of the age of things in distinct caches. So you can say this cache has this much stuff that's a second old or 5 seconds old or a minute old or 10 minutes or an hour or whatever you want. You can set up those bins in different ways. And then you can go through and say, okay, this cache has some really, really hot stuff in it, has a lot of really hot stuff in it, but this other cache has stuff that's like 3 days old in it. And then you can start making decisions about, well, how do I prioritize these things? What do I want to do with them? What's valuable to me right now at the moment? So that's basically all the age binning is. And it could be looking at RocksDB's cache versus the O node cache, or in other contexts, it could be looking at like the buffer cache versus the O node cache. But that's it lets you start making decisions based on that rather than just saying, well, we have two caches and we know that there's this much stuff in this cache and this much stuff in this cache, but we don't know anything about them. We don't know anything about what the relative age of the things in these.
Right.
So that's basically what it is. And I've got code for it, working code for it, just not anything that's real recent. So we need to be rebased, and then certainly it will behave differently with all of the different work that we've done since I wrote it. So it'll need to be retested and examined, especially with the double caching fix, because that will have a big impact on it. Okay. Let's see. And also this is higher priority than that is, refactoring the cache pinning and trimming. So that's the stuff that we just talked about yesterday, Sage.
Oh, right, yeah.
So that's proposal
So
right now,
handling
but
of and cache items versus trimming. Yep. So I'm putting all these in the on the Trello board just track of them under the blue store thing.
Cool.
So I have sharding RocksDB, smarter device selection for writes is Igor's best. The cache age binning, improving the handling of pinned cache items versus trimming.
Yep.
Preventing scrub from polluting
double
the
caching?
cache.
Oh, yep, that one too.
But the onode, void onode, double caching. That's also related to. Is that already done? Is that related to the cache bidding as well? No,
Sage?
it's just the onode double caching. Isn't that already done?
Yeah. I mean, it was working. I've got a PR that applies to master, but the question is, do we want to require an OSD reset to enable it? Whereas if we piggyback on Adam's stuff, we can use his conversion tool to make it so that, since it requires a non-disk format change,
I thought the onodes were already in their own column family.
No, we never enabled the column family by default in master.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Or in
Oh, all right.
So the plan right now is to do it once Adam's stuff lands, and then to rebase my stuff on top of his.
Nodes. Got it. Okay.
So it's
we should just
it's
put them
basically
together.
done, but yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Any more stuff for Blue Store in there that we should add in?
The last one I added is small blobs in RocksDB. Got in CDM yesterday. Igor wants to do.
Oh, yeah.
Just for like very small objects or for small bits of objects. Dumping those into RocksDB.
Yeah.
That'll be less important with the small
mixed
min
on it.
size. But yeah.
Yeah.
Or KB min Alex size in there too.
Yeah. How small do we see people? I mean, do we really see people throwing like 500 bytes in a RGW object?
Matt, what are the small object RGW workloads that you guys see?
We are hearing about a large information provider that is literally putting in objects as small as 4K, representing news stories, snippets.
Okay.
And after EC, that's split up into probably 1K, right? Or maybe even 5 from 12 bytes.
Beg pardon, with EC?
Yeah. Are they using EC as well?
They in some cases, yes.
Great.
That's extreme, but much more common is the traditional mention, 64K or something like that, but maybe ranging slightly below that. But we do know this is a large user.
I think it's a open question whether how much value we'll get in optimizing storage of sub 4K objects, I guess. With EC, that definitely makes it more important because he's whatever, like a 4.
Definitely interesting if we have a profile that can get close.
Yeah.
I mean, for EC, it's so insane to be doing that, though. I mean, EC with smaller than 4K objects just seems kind of like
smaller than 4K objects. Maybe
insanity.
Not, but is 4K insanity? Is that number insanity?
Kinda. I mean,
I think using EC, like using erasure coding a 4K object, I guess.
But
yeah, exactly. I mean, at that point, why don't you just go to replication? I mean,
well, if you have a petabyte of 4K objects, but at that point, you're like, I don't know if an object store is quite the right thing for you. Database, but yeah. Well, I think we should. This may be the top item on the list, but we can look at it. I think perhaps more interesting is when you have like a 5K object. Does that consume 5K or does it consume 8K?
Well,
The small blobs will
8K,
help there
right?
too. Well, with the blobs, with putting small blobs in rocks to be, it would 5K, 6K or whatever the right amp space amp is for the rocks to be column family that has all these blobs. Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have a lot of stuff on the list now for Blue Star, so
Sure. Um, some not Blue Store, but for OSD, op tracker overhead is probably low priority, so it's not doesn't have to be fixed. But I think
Yeah,
Majin
I'd
and
rather
Kang had
focus
a
on that
PR.
tracing.
Or,
Getting
yeah,
that tracing all good to go.
he was just proposing disabling it entirely, which should be easy, but maybe unpalpable for us. Anyway, yeah. So I was gonna add in there that I've got a PR, but it's not. I was gonna redo it based on Patrick's uh, dislike for old C string style. Um, let's see what else. Oh, Sage, I put in PG auto scaling here to make it play nicer with old style pools.
okay.
I think is important personally, just because I have a strong feeling that we're going to get a lot of people complaining if we don't.
And I think so. At the proposal there is to basically make it avoid reducing a pool size until there's something else. There's another pool in the cluster that actually needs the base base. So if you
Yep.
create a pool with lots of PGs but it's empty, it'll just sit there until something else starts filling up the cluster, and it makes sense to scale it back.
Seems good to me. I mean, we could, if we wanted to, we could make it so that it targets a certain number of PGs per pool as kind of like being the upper level optimal, right? Like if someone sets 1,000, maybe you don't really want to give it 1,000. Not that they can, I guess, right now because we have the limits, but maybe 50 is good enough, and we'd prefer that be kind of like the upper limit of what an individual pool gets or something. I don't know. We could do it like that. So
I'm
it's
less worried about the upper limit. That's the lower limit. That is the tricky one because that limits you. It affects your performance. So it's just hard
yeah.
coded to 4, or well, it's a config option, but it's basically just set to 4 by default. Um, but it might make more sense to have that be somewhat dynamic. I don't know.
Do we want kind of like a target number, like per pool target number though, like per OSD per pool target number?
I don't think so. I think we need to like shift our thinking so that we're not thinking about PGs, we're thinking about what actually the user actually wants. So when we create a pool, we shouldn't think about how many PGs it gets. We should be thinking about what level of parallelism the user wants and how much data they expect to put in it, and then derive the PG from that. So every place that does a pool create basically needs to, whatever it's doing to decide the PG num, we need to like rethink what the appropriate input should be.
Presumably the user doesn't even care about parallelism, right? They just want it to be fast. Really is what it
Yeah,
comes
yeah,
down
that's
to,
what I
right?
mean. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't know how they get there. They just know that, they don't want it to be slow.
Yeah. Yep.
Mhm. Okay. Well, anyway, this is an easy, hopefully a fairly easy thing to just tweak so that they're not fighting with it as much.
Yeah.
All right. I think the RGW guys had to probably go for their meeting, so we don't have. Oh, we have
Yep.
Adam. You're still here, so
I don't have anything else for. Yeah. Maybe I'll
there's
just go through the list now.
yeah. I guess Sage, as far as the OSD goes, the CLS code is one thing that I see the OSD spending time on for like bucket listings, um, specifically decoding and encoding, logging. Um, some of the other things we got out of the way already. Uh, but those are some big ticket items that the CLS code is working on in wall clock profiles during bucket listing.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like something to talk about with the people.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, do you know, as Brett had mentioned to me, that Patrick is working on some multi-MDS refactoring for eliminating kind of like poor
Multi-threading, lock granularity. Chung
yeah.
was working on this a long time ago. I think I remember hearing recently that he was doing something with it, but I think he's working on the async creation deletion first. So I'm not sure where it is in the priority list, but it's definitely on the list.
Okay. Yeah. Um, and then the file system creation on RBD, do we want to solve it ourselves, or do we want to try to hope that the file system guys do something?
I think it's a red herring. It's a, yeah. If, yes, so the makeFS could be a little bit more smart about doing a discard or write zeros instead of actually writing literal zeros. But maybe writing literal zeros is actually better. I don't know. You could argue either way. But I think if you have performance issues creating an empty file system, um, then you're thinking about the wrong thing because you're going to have performance issues once you actually start to use it. Like the creation of the file system is insignificant in comparison to using it. So I think it's noise.
So
It's
so
not the thing we
this
should be optimizing. If you can't
okay.
create file systems
I
fast
guess
enough, you've under provisioned your system.
okay. Yeah, I guess the question there was that there was some kind of someone had come up with a requirement that you need to be able to create a file system a second,
Yeah,
like one file system per second.
yeah, and you can do that if you provision enough storage. So anyway, that's a
Okay.
downstream conversation anyway. That's not.
Well, no, sort of, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
not. I think this has come up in the context of like LKML, so I figured it was right right game for us, right? There's a big thread on it there that didn't involve us that much.
about makeFS performance for makeFS.xfs, you mean?
Yeah, and discard and all this stuff, and
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think again, I would just defer to the XFS guys. I mean, if they add the option to do the efficient write zeros, then great, we'll use it. But it's not always what you want because if you're using a thin provision system, then you actually don't want to um, uh, have the kernel be thin provisioned, or else space will hit you in a more painful way. But
sure,
that doesn't really matter for us, so I think we would use it. But whatever. Anyway,
sure.
I
Okay,
don't think we need to talk about it
well
here.
that's yeah, that's my list. Anything else that should be
Cool.
added on this?
I don't think anything that's strictly
Not
performance related. No, I still want to get the Mon memory target and MDS memory target stuff in. I think that's not quite done yet. Otherwise, yeah.
The only additional
We,
thing for the mod memory target is making it respect the same environment variables that the OSU one does for containers.
Oh, is that all that's left?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that part. Or even just change the code so it's not OSD specific. I think. I can't remember.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Where
It
is.
was in the common code already, I think.
Yeah.
Just look at the right options.
Yeah, it should be pretty easy. There are already switch statements for like OSD. OSD is just the only case that's there, so it's really easy to add them all in case. Big option name.
Yeah.
do we need an RGW memory target?
Absolutely.
Probably someday.
Everything needs to have memory target.
Yep. Actually, there's one other thing on the list. Messenger 2 performance. First, characterize it and understand what the impact of encryption is. I think we still don't actually have an answer for that.
No, I don't think we do either.
Anyway. Okay. All right, I gotta go.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming, Sage. Have a good one. All right. Have a good week, guys.
I actually have a quick question for you, Mark.
Thanks
Oh,
to you too.
Yeah, sure.
As you know, I've been doing some testing, performance tuning related stuff on all SSDs, and I've finally made the jump from our Luminous release to Nautilus, and there are two outstanding things that I noticed. One, 64K performance dramatically improved. That's good news. Bad news is I'm seeing a rather dramatic drop in large sequential transfers. This is CephFS, so I haven't traced it back if it's just CephFS or if I'm seeing it in RBD, and I'm checking things like looking at the I/O schedulers, and I still need to do some base testing to see if it's in the MPT3 SAS driver. Just want to know if anyone else had seen that. It's about a 30% drop that I'm seeing.
Going from Luminous to Nautilus.
Yes.
And large reads or writes or both?
It's large sequential writes.
Large sequential writes. Okay. And replication or erasure coding?
This is all replicated at the moment.
Replicated. Okay. And you said SSD drives?
Yeah. So just to give you an idea.
30% drop.
Yeah. So with Luminous, I was at about 13.5 gigs a second. I'm just a bit under 10 gigs a second. This is gigabytes a second on the cluster.
Okay.
I've seen the average write latencies climb. So.
And you said CephFS.
Yes.
New writes or overwrites?
Both. New writes are actually worse than 30%. Overwrites are 30%. New writes are. Just taking a quick look. New writes are closer to 40%.
Are you using stupid allocator or bitmap allocator?
It's a good question. Probably stupid allocator at the moment. I'd have to check and see.
I wonder if it's possible that maybe check that and see if it's possible that if they switched. I don't remember if we defaulted to the new bitmap allocator if none was specified. That would be something to look at.
Make a note. I'll check on that and see if I've got more information next week for us.
Sure. Yeah, that would be the thing that I guess I would start out with. I don't think there's anything else though that would be worth. Yeah. Oh, Messenger.
So this is still V1.
V1. Okay, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I don't think that went into Nautilus. Oh, sorry, I'm losing track of when we added
Yeah.
stuff.
No, that's fine. Yeah, so the V2's there. It's just we haven't enabled it for anything other than just mon traffic.
Okay,
Yeah, like I say, the 64K dramatic improvements, 2x level type improvements. So that's
nice.
good.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's good. Yeah, it'd be worth knowing too if well, you don't see it with reads. So I was gonna say
Right.
what I was wondering is if it could be network or if it's disk related. But if you don't see it with reads, then it's probably disk, not network. Like something to do with how it's
Yeah.
in the disk. Um, do you have the ability to go back and retest each case, or are you now fully over um, to Nautilus?
Um, I could conceptually, it's a matter of time at that point. If we come up with some specific
Yeah,
hypothesis, I might be able to test. It takes about half a day to redeploy the cluster. So
yeah. But the only thing I was going to say is that it would be useful to have a block trace of what's happening at the OSD level in both cases. But you know, don't kill yourself to get one.
yeah, if it's not something I figure out otherwise, we may look at doing that. Just from an informational perspective, it may be very helpful. Uh, anyway, like I say, I'm
Even just
walking
getting
through. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, even getting a block trace on the new one though, you wouldn't have to redeploy, but if you could get a block trace when you're doing a big write, you could see if you're getting like unaligned writes or if there's anything else weird going on that it would result in like a 30 or 50% performance reduction.
Yep, that's a good suggestion. Yeah, and yeah, I'm also finding some interesting things with the I/O schedulers. I've got multi-queue block I/O enabled, and I don't know if you've tested the different I/O schedulers. That's one of the things.
Not
So MQ
recently.
deadline, yeah, MQ deadline is the first one I looked at, and I'm doing BFQ, and BFQ is dramatically lower performing what I see right now.
Wow.
So I'll keep walking through. All these results will end up getting published. I'm going to do a performance tuning guide around the end of the year, so that should be interesting.
Nice. Cool. I'll look forward to it. Yeah, the last time I looked at IO schedulers was like, you know, basically no op deadline and CFQ back like 5 years ago or something.
Yeah.
So I'm very out of date on what the newest is.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's interesting the effect that they're having in an all SSD environment. So anyway, I'll
Yeah.
update you guys as I get more data.
Cool. All right. Sounds good.
Thanks.
Well, have a good week, guys.
Thanks, you too.